morning, everyone. My name is Pierre Lalanne. I'm a blockchain developer within the Air France KLM program, Air France KLM blockchain program, sorry. And I'm really pleased to be here today. I'd like to thank the University of Nicosia for organizing such a great event, and also all the speakers and organizers. So today, let's talk about blockchain and how it can impact the travel industry with naturally a tight focus on airline industry. So I'll try to be quick on just describing the blockchain program at Air France KLM and the approach that we thought was great. So our ambitions and priorities. The program started in May 2018 after a study about blockchain as an innovative technology. And our ambition is to position Air France KLM as a blockchain champion for the airline industry. We want to be first mover, develop our own experimentations, and we also want to participate into industry project to be followers and participate into a reflections team. Our priorities are in three parts. First of all, we want to build skills. We want to develop internal knowledge in order to be able to develop our own minimum viable products. We want to study different types of blockchains and keep being open-minded about that. We want to prepare our technical stacks so that if this technology becomes mature enough for our industry, we want to be ready to implement it, and so having the technical stack to be able to do this. And perhaps this would be a dream to have a blockchain as a service consumable in the company. This would be great. The second part that we want to work on is governance. As soon as you try to launch a blockchain project in your company, you begin thinking about governance issues. So what collaboration setups can we have when we're working on a project? Will we have a consortium? Will we have just a working group? Will we partner and team up with some tech companies? Will we only do internal developments? These are questions. There's also the legal aspect of blockchain technology. Let's imagine that tomorrow we have a project in production. What legal aspect will it raise? And finally, some sourcing strategy will we build internally, in the cloud, somewhere else? The final point is about raising awareness, and this is really important to get to the use cases. We want to become facilitators in the whole Air France KLM group so that we are identified as people who can help businesses build their use cases. So we are organizing ideation sessions, and we want to work on use cases, and we define some 6 months waves to work on these use cases. I'm trying to be quick. This is the team. We're on 9 people, 5 developers, 2 infrastructure project managers, 1 architect, and Iris Taguet, the head of the program. And we are all from IT departments, which is a great luck because we have various backgrounds. And it's a joint team, Air France and KLM as a group. Now, before going into the use cases, how to raise the awareness of the businesses. It's really something that is important in such a big group. You have to go knock at all the doors of the businesses and say, okay, here is what blockchain is, here is what we could do, have you got ideas, etc. So basically one of our roles is to spread the good word of blockchain in the company. We organized a blockchain cup challenge, which was like being able to bet on the soccer World Cup during the summer in a blockchain. We organized some mini web series to spread the word in the company. And we are also organizing on-demand ideation sessions. And the ideas can come directly from the businesses, and sometimes we come with some ideas that we think are interesting, and we chat with the business to see what we could do. And finally, we are trying to train the businesses. We have a basic presentation, and we are giving it in many opportunities to try to make them realize what blockchain is about, and perhaps being able to submit some ideas to us with their use cases. So now let's talk about what blockchain can do for the travel industry. Just a quick disclaimer, all the use cases I'm going to talk about here, we are not necessarily working on it. Some are just some use cases that we think are interesting, that we read about. Some are just ideas, perhaps there are bad ideas, I don't know. But these are the use cases that you can hear about when you read some reports, when you discuss with people from airline industry or hotel industry. Yeah, just a quick word. We could say that there are 3 main usages for blockchain technology. When you want to track assets, seems to be a good choice. A property, luxury goods, an art piece. When you want to trace something and deliver certifications. And finally, when you want to automate some process through a smart contract. So a first use case that can be really interesting in the airline world is about operational disruptions. We've all experienced being on a late flight or a canceled flight. So this could totally involve smart contracts to enable, like, let's say, an automated compensation that could be triggered through listening to an oracles or an external data source in order to deliver an automated compensation to the customer. I think all of us already experienced claiming to an airline, and this is really a pain. It's really long. So this could be something to work on. Another idea which is tightly linked is just developing a basic insurance contract, which would be parallel to the insurance that you could take with your tickets, and just to back you in case of an operational disruption. That's something that the French firm AXA and the startup Fidzi have been working on. I invited you to go to their website. You can see that it's really simple. The user interface is quite simple. And the idea is, well, you will submit to an insurance policy for a certain amount of money determined by AXA and I guess some complex computations. And well, if your flight is delayed, right when you arrive at the airport, if the flight is delayed, you will get your money through a smart contract execution. So this looks really interesting. Another use case could be around engineering and maintenance. So the airline business is about 3 things. Making people travel. This is like what we call the passage. Shipping goods. This is the cargo. And it's also about maintenance and overall reparation. So this is something that we could do many things about. We could track the parts, because parts in the plane have a real life cycle of their own. They travel. They are removed from one plane, put on another plane, landed to another airline. They travel around the world. They go back to your facilities. They go into the shop, get repaired, put on another plane. So they have a whole life cycle. And we could imagine that we could track these parts, their life, in the network of participants in the maintenance world. And perhaps we could trigger some interesting stuff. For instance, when the part becomes a bit old, that it has only a few hours of potential left, perhaps we could trigger an action. These are ideas of what we could do. And maintenance is a field where you involve, by design, many participants, and they share critical information about the parts. So this could be a good pick for blockchaining something. Settlements between partners. This is definitely a really interesting use case. And this would involve, of course, smart contracts. Well, so let's say that you would register transactions. We'll say later what kind of transaction in a blockchain, viewable by all the participants. And you would use smart contracts to settle what partners owe to each other. And this would avoid disputes and heavy processes. We were talking a bit earlier about disintermediation, about removing brokers. But sometimes blockchain is also about removing just a complex, costly, and heavy layer of processing. And this is what settlement use cases could be. One example is, for instance, the revenue split on ticket sales. When you buy a ticket today to an airline, what happens is that a part of the money will go directly to the airline who you bought with, but some other parts will go to other partner airlines. And this is subject to many disputes and arguments in order to know at the end of the month, at the end of the day, who owes what to who. So this could be a really interesting use case to embed the transactions in a blockchain and then use smart contracts to compute the results of who owes what to who. And another interesting use case around settlements would be about loyalty points. So let's say that you earn a loyalty point with an airline A, and usually you can be able to spend it with an airline B, who is partnering with airline A. But what happens is that when you spend your miles to airline B didn't get any money, they only get miles. So they will bill the airline A for what you bought. And there's like billing exchanges around loyalty points. So this would be also an interesting settlement part. And especially in the airline industry, some processes are a bit heavy. Sometimes it's made by hand or using some Excel sheets. So this could be a good pick for a blockchain. So loyalty program, another direction that some airlines are taking or some hotels want to explore is really tokenizing the loyalty points into a blockchain. If I'm not mistaken, I think Singapore Airlines is working on that with a parallel loyalty program embedded into the blockchain. And this allows to share your loyalty point balance with partners, restaurants, shops, and then you can use it. There's also a project, so we don't know exactly where they're at, but IATACON was a project also around a whole money used by all airlines. But this is really exploratory. Shipment or baggage tracking, this is of course an interesting use case. It would definitely involve some IoT technologies, and we have seen in other talks and presentations that this raises some tough challenges, but you could want to identify, track the life cycle of a shipment or a baggage and see which stakeholder missed a part in the process. Or perhaps for a shipment, use a smart contract to see if you met all the terms of your contracts, temperature, the date of expeditions, and stuff like that. So these are interesting use cases as well. Finally, I'll try to be really quick. Winding Tree, I don't know if you've heard of Winding Tree. It's an interesting project. It's an open source project and a non-profitable company. They want to work on travel inventory distribution via the blockchain. The idea is that today hotels or airlines have to publish their fares and the availability of their hotel rooms or their tickets. And today it's done via big companies and big channels that work really well. But Winding Tree is wondering, well, could we use blockchain to decentralize this and to propose new channels to expose your availability? I'll be really quick on that one just to say that Air France KLM and Winding Tree signed a partnership. We're exploring what could be done. Other airlines are also involved, Lufthansa, Air Canada more recently. So we're trying to define what Winding Tree could bring to the airline industry, but I'm sure that we'll get to interesting projects. And we were involved in their hackathon in Prague in October. It was really great. So if you're interested into distribution and inventory, go have a look at Winding Tree's website. Other stuff, so loyalty we've talked about, Winding Tree we've talked about. S7 Airlines is a Russian airline that is really pioneering into blockchain, and they're working mainly on ticket sales, and they're exploring some blockchain use cases around that. And finally, there are some interesting stuff about flight information sharing. That's British Airways who teamed up with CETA around sharing the information, operational information on the flights. Just to finish, I have 1 minute, a little bit more than a minute, to talk about opportunities and challenges. I hope I'm not talking too fast. So what we've witnessed when we're working on blockchain projects is that, well, there can be a tunnel effect. You can be focusing on blockchain, but we should definitely focus on the user's needs first, especially when you're working in a company, in a big group. When you go to a business, you should tell them, okay, what's your issue before telling them, do you want to do a blockchain project? And sometimes they come to you and they say, I want to do blockchain, but they do not know why. So you should focus on users' need. Then you can witness that there's a strong emphasis to put on test-driven and zero failure philosophy. You can't afford having failure in blockchain. Once you've put garbage into the blockchain, it's going to remain there. So you have to be really focused on that when developing. Finally, some challenges for a big group like Air France KLM. Train resources are scarce. It's a real challenge to get resources to come to you. Keeping up with innovation is really tough when you are going to businesses to get use cases, trying to get knowledge. then you have to keep up with the innovation pace. And we've seen with all the presentation that it's tremendously fast in the blockchain industry. Standards are to be defined. There's a huge confusion between cryptocurrencies and blockchain that needs to be got out when you're talking with businesses. And finally, we can wonder if private blockchain, that's what we talked about earlier, is not about decentralization. So this goes back to these governance questions. Well, to conclude in just one word, I truly believe that blockchain has a huge disruptive potential in airline industry, because by design it involves a bunch of partners. Next time you get into a plane, sit by the window, have a look outside, look at all the partners that are working around the plane, fuel, people putting the fuel in the plane, people handling the baggage, people from the crew, technical people from maintenance. This is a huge ecosystem, and it involves sharing data, sharing trust, and this is a great use case for blockchain technologies. Thank you.
Questions?
If you have questions. Sorry I had to talk a bit fast, but yes, sure.
Hi, is there any thought of blockchain being used in aviation security, passenger security, cargo security?
That's a good question. So the use cases that you can hear of that would be the most close to what you are talking about would be around certification, like registering certification of a part into the blockchain. Perhaps in a few years, registering some approvals for planes into the blockchain, or perhaps some crew certifications into the blockchain. These are some subjects that are tackled by other airlines, like registering, the cruise license into a blockchain. More about security, I guess that's one challenge that we have to overcome, is that it involves really private data. You know that when there is an airline catastrophe, you are supposed to be able to lock all the data and deliver it to the competent authority. So this is a tough one. I guess we have to hope that some technology, perhaps zero knowledge technology, stuff like that, will help being able to put this critical data in a manner or another in a blockchain. But it's a tough one.
Sorry, I believe the World Economic Forum have produced an idea for a trusted traveler scheme using blockchain. Are you aware of that?
You mean like an account, being like a frequent flyer or something?
Yeah, trusted traveler, somebody who can go through security without any
identity.
problems. Yeah.
Identity, of course, I didn't mention. Identity is a huge use case, but we believe, as being an airline, that perhaps airlines won't be the one to bring this use case to life. I guess some biggest consortium or company, IATA, are working on this and should be the ones to bring these use cases to life, because it's really tough when you're just an airline to work on that. And it also involves perhaps airports. Perhaps we'll see later in another presentation what is done into that.
Okay.
But yes, definitely. Still have a bit extra time if you questions.
Yes. So I think time for a quick question.
Yes, sure.
Last one. Thank you.
I would like to ask if you see mass adoption for the blockchain in the airline industry in the near future.
Yes, definitely. That's the.
And what is the timeline that you give?
It's really hard to tell. It involves personal thoughts here. I believe that it has tremendous potential. That's what I said. It involves many partners, and this is the definition of blockchain: collaborating, having partners sharing data. So I believe that there is something to do. The duration of Air France-KLM blockchain program is 2 years. Like we thought, okay, let's take 2 years and think about what we can do. So yeah, let's meet in 2020 and at Decentralized and see what we have achieved. But yeah, I hope that we will see huge developments in the upcoming years, I guess it will be done.
Thank you.